All right, welcome everybody to the Soul Unleashed podcast. I'm Mike Nicholas, of course, and my guest today that I'm really excited to have is Jacque Hilbrich. And I'm just going to read a little bit about Jackie's background, and then Jacque, you can fill in the holes as we go, please.
Okay.
But Jackie's a gifted 29-year-old psychic medium and aura reader, and she has over 7 years of professional experience. Since childhood, Jackie's possessed a natural ability to see energy and tap into her intuition, which is way cool. These innate gifts have allowed her to touch the lives of clients, not only in the United States, but also internationally in countries such as the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Australia. Jackie's accuracy has led to countless successful readings, predicting significant life events such as moves, births, and promotions. I really want to ask you about that too.
Okay.
She's hosted large spiritual events, collaborating with other talented tarot readers. That's tarot cards, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And other psychics to create transformative experiences for the attendees. Driven by her passion for making a difference in people's lives, Jackie's ultimate goal is to help as many people as possible by providing them with guidance, healing, and a deeper understanding of their spiritual journey. So Jackie, I've told you a little bit about my audience. There are people who are skeptics,
Yes.
like I was. And so some of the questions I'll ask you will be how to best provide benefit to them as we go through the interview.
Okay.
But let me ask you the common questions first, which is how'd you get started on this journey and how it all started for you?
Sure. Well, thank you so much again for having me on today. I'm very excited to get to talk about all of this. I have been extremely intuitive since I was around 5 or 6 years old. That's one of my first memories of seeing energy around people was actually when I was about 5. And I remember going to my mom and being like, why am I seeing colors around people? And she was like, oh gosh. But she had known about auras because my older sister also has some abilities. So she kind of paved the way for me to be able to ask my mom questions about these things. So very intuitive from a very young age, but I got really sick around like 12 years old. I became very chronically ill and shut all my abilities down. I was actually convinced that the auras, being able to see the auras and tap into my intuition was causing me to be ill. So I kind of became a little bit resentful, honestly, of my gift. Shut down for, I think it was around 7 or 8 years while I was just really chronically ill, in and out of the hospital for various different things, but mostly chronic migraines, and then just getting sick with, the flu and strep and everything. Like if I wasn't in pain with migraines, I was down for the count with the flu or something like that. Mm-hmm. So after I recovered from my chronic illness, I began to look at my gift a little bit differently. And I was like, I really could use this to help people. And in kind of switching that perspective, I was able to start to accept that this is something that I was born with that I could really help people with. And I began doing little practice readings on people, acquaintances, family members, friends, and started to get really accurate information. And I was like, wow, I can really do something with this. So
how old were you because you were sick when you were 12, you said. So how old were you when you started this?
I was around, before I was doing stuff professionally, like just kind of diving into like my second big spiritual awakening, I was around 19 years old, I think, 20 years old. So it was about a 7 or 8 year period where I was really chronically ill. And then after that, I believe I was about 19. So so after that, I just kind of tried to expand by reaching out to this local crystal shop, and they were like, why don't you come in and offer $15 readings, do some aura readings, see how it goes. So I did. And I became booked out for like 2 months at this place. I was having people drive up from, everywhere to see me. I had people a whole family drove up from Indianapolis to come get readings from me. And that was my kind of realization that I should really be taking this more seriously. So that was kind of the start. And then I moved into the online space around 2016, and then really started taking it seriously in 2018 And it just kind of took off from there.
For those of us that don't really understand this,
Yeah.
certainly me, what does an aura look like? What does that mean?
So everybody is made of energy. Everything is made of energy. Basic chemistry suggests that, every single thing in our world starts with an atom, which is really energy at its core. Okay. So an aura is the energetic field that surrounds people. And most people have about a 3 to 5 foot energetic field that almost kind of looks like an egg shape, with different colors and different sort of qualities in it. So there can be, different colors, different shapes, different clarity of the color, and that all is associated with certain personality traits, or things that we're going through can kind of show up in that energy field as well. So it's really impacted by a lot of different things, but everybody has an energy field. And yeah, one thing that I like to kind of say to people that are like, well, how do we know that that's like real? Have you ever been in a grocery store next to somebody that's just like seething with anger, or been around somebody that's like very sad, and you can just feel that energy sort of come into your space when they're like standing behind you or next to you? Have you ever experienced anything like that?
I,
No.
I'm sorry to say sorry to say I have not, but I
Oh,
believe
okay.
in it. I believe in
Yeah.
it. Just today I was checking out of this little shop where my wife's in the hospital, and there's a little store there, and I was in a hurry to get out, and the lady said to me, "There's something wrong, different with you today. Why are you in such a hurry?" And as I talked to her, she also has the ability to sense those kind of things. So it
Mhm.
was kind of interesting. But let me ask you this about your gift. Can you see this with just living things, or do you see it with inanimate objects also?
So it's interesting. You can see it with inanimate objects. You can see it with, trees, but you can also see it around, a vacuum cleaner. The difference between the living object's energy field and an inanimate object's energy field is that a living person or a tree or a plant will have a brighter, more clear sort of energy. It's like a bigger energy field compared to a vacuum cleaner or a, cup or something like that. It's going to be much smaller and closer, almost like an outline of the object.
Does it work with pets also?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So do you spend your days like seeing this stuff all the time, or do you have to deliberately try and see it or look for it? Jackie, I just asked you if you wouldn't mind repeating the answer again. You said that you see auras around both people, animals, inanimate objects. And my question was, do you go through your day seeing auras around all these things, or is it something you have to consciously decide to do?
Yeah, so I did when I was younger. I was able to actually see people's energies with my physical eyes and have very distinct memories of walking down the hallway in middle school and seeing auras surrounding people. It was very overwhelming sometimes, but when I started doing this more professionally, back in 2016, I actually began to get the information clairvoyantly, which means in the same place where you would imagine sort of what an apple looks like right now in your mind's eye. That's the same place where I'm seeing the energy now. So I have the ability now to kind of turn it on and off, so I'm not overwhelmed as I go about my day.
Does somebody have to be a willing participant for that, or can you just say, "Hey, I want to see what this person's energy looks like"?
I'm very big on ethics and consent with energy work specifically. So I would usually ask people, especially you know, um, if I was seeing something that was a little bit like alarming, or like if they were going through something really tough at the time, I would definitely ask first. But I mean, I see celebrities' energies all the time. I see people in the grocery store's energies if I do want to turn it on while I'm out in public. But I usually like to ask permission first before I dive into stuff like that.
Are you able to see my energy like even remotely through
Yes.
the? Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is it good or bad?
It's good. I think you're a little stressed right now. I can feel.
I
I mean, there you have a very distinct a lot of people have blue as like their first energy layer. It's the most common aura color. And blue can be associated with the throat chakra, so it's communication, but there's also a grief and sadness aspect to it as well. And for you, I do feel like something, I don't know if you've just been like extra stressed recently or if something has been like weighing on you a little bit more, but there's definitely a little more
I'm sure it's related to
um
my wife. I'm sure it's
to your
related to her.
wife.
Yeah, I mean
Okay.
she's still in the hospital and everything, so
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
deal with that every day. But
Oh,
but yeah, thank you. That's probably what it
yeah.
is.
Okay.
And the reason I asked that question to get back to you though was because I had spoken to years ago. I met a police detective
Hmm.
who was very successful at what he did, and he told me that he had the ability to read auras, and he used that when questioning people, and he could tell whether or not they were lying or not. And that was not voluntarily, voluntary, certainly on the part of the people he was reading.
Right.
So I wondered how you did that.
Yeah, you can definitely see. I mean, I could see really anybody's energy. It's just my own ethical thing, and for a police officer, I think that's a great use of it to help solve crimes and things like that. For me specifically, I just like to make sure that the other party involved is consenting just
Sure.
before I go into it. But
Okay, another question, please. You mentioned in the bio there, I've been led to believe there's quite a difference between a psychic versus a medium, and you seem to be doing both. Is that an accurate understanding?
yes, yeah. There's a saying in the community that not all psychics are mediums, but all mediums are psychic. So there is a distinct difference between the two. Psychics are people that can see the future, usually, that can predict certain things that are going to happen, certain timelines for people. Specifically, like with me, I've seen moves and births and promotions at jobs and things like that. And mediums, on the other hand, are those that are able to connect to crossed loved ones, people that may even be like ghosts or spirits, things like that. So that's what a medium is compared to a psychic. So a psychic medium is somebody that does both.
Do you tap into different energies or gifts to do one or the other?
Yes. So I mostly work clairvoyantly and clairaudiently, which means that I see visions, I see images, symbols, things like that, and then clairaudiently, I'll hear specific messages or specific dates of when things are going to happen. When I'm communicating with somebody that's crossed over, I'll usually use those two abilities the most because they're the most straightforward
Hmm.
and accurate for me. So that's kind of how I work intuitively.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can I ask you a question about, you also mentioned tarot cards.
Yes.
Is that something you do?
So I read in kind of a weird mixed way. So I don't go all the time off of like specific tarot meanings. Like there are very distinct meanings for certain cards, but the cards that I use and that I've used for, the whole time basically that I've been doing this work have very distinct colors on them. They have seasons on them. They have people on them. So when I pull cards, I do go off of more of what I'm intuitively being drawn to in the pictures of the cards, and then use whatever I'm getting clairvoyantly and clairaudiently from, people's spirit guides or my spirit guides to give more guidance on what's going to happen in the future. So as much as I do kind of use tarot meanings, it's not really like the main thing that I do when I'm pulling cards. I go more into the specifics of the pictures and things that stick out to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
The reason I brought up tarot is because in a lot of places, people, cultures, they're considered more occult, I guess, or more dangerous or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think about tarot because I've never done a tarot reading.
Yeah.
But speaking of that, what is your religious background and how does that figure into what you do?
So I grew up in a very open-minded household. I was very lucky. I think that if I had grown up in more of a religious household, I might not have fully grown into my gifts like I have today. But my mom's side of the family specifically was very, very Catholic. So my grandparents, very Catholic. My mom grew up in the church a little bit, but was more into creating a relationship with God outside of the church. And because of the experiences my older sister went through when she was younger, my mom went down more of like a spiritual rabbit hole. She didn't really believe in any of this stuff until my older sister was having these experiences, seeing energy kind of like I was. So she started doing a lot of research on spiritual topics, astral projection, auras, crystals, things like that. And that sent her on her own spiritual awakening. So I grew up in a really open house. You know, I didn't have a lot of religious pressure. And I kind of was able to just find my own way with what I believed spiritually. And when I was really sick and isolated really as a 12-year-old, I started researching like what are these auras, like what does it really mean, what are crystals, is there anything that science has said that can back that crystals have energy or that auras really exist. And I would stay up so late and I would be researching all of these topics. So I had my own freedom to kind of figure out what I believed in a very open-minded way, which was awesome.
So I want to ask you what are crystals, but first, did you have any you know uh, conflict or questioning from your grandparents who were Catholic?
So my grandparents actually did not know that I could do all of this stuff. They had no idea. They passed away. My grandpa passed away back in 2020, and then my grandma passed away like 8 months before him. So before I really got back into this work, they really didn't know about it. And I think partially there was some pressure of like, let's try to keep this on the down low. Like, let's not tell grandma and grandpa about this. Like, we'll keep it on the DL. I do feel like, I've had dreams about them since they've passed. So I do feel that they now know that I do all of this
Sure.
stuff. Um, but yeah, I never had that, when they were here, I never had that conversation with them of like, yeah, I can see dead people and I can see auras and stuff like that. I don't know how that would have gone, but it's definitely something that I think about.
Okay. So what are crystals?
So crystals are different from like your average rock. They're actually composed of atoms that create a crystalline structure, like down to the very core of them, which means that they emit an energy that a normal rock like wouldn't because of the actual atomic structure of them. Okay. So crystals are really great for many different things. They can change and influence our energy. A lot of times when I'm doing readings for people, I'll actually get suggestions of what stones that people should work with based on what's going on with their energy, because just having a crystal in your energetic field can influence what's going on with your aura or your chakras or things like that.
Okay. Um, Let me just get back to faith a second
Sure.
because my whole background is pretty much faith based, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, do you, with all the people that you've read and the professional work that you've done, is there any common thread that comes through to you about what happens after we die?
Oh, yes. Yes, there are a few things that come up consistently, especially with mediumship work. And there's like, I would say there's probably three main things that come through. The first thing is when you die, you are 100% greeted by family members that have already passed, pets that have already passed, friends. You have kind of a welcome party, is what has been communicated to me while I do this work, which is
Mhm.
very comforting to hear because, of course, you want to like have them waiting for you and know that you're going to be reunited.
Right.
The second thing that I think is the biggest thing really for me is there is something that continues after we die. Our energy doesn't just poof, that's it, magic and we're gone. You know what I mean? It's not like that. We cross over and our energy still continues. In what way I don't 100% know, but after doing this work for so long and seeing how peaceful people's energies are after they come through, even if they've died in a way where they've been really sick or the last few years of their lives were a big struggle, they come through and they're so at peace that it's like, of course they're going to be like okay after they cross over. So that's something too, is there's definitely a continuation after we die. The last thing that I feel like is very consistent too is I've never seen any evidence that there is a hell. I just haven't. I've not seen any evidence from my experience, from the people that I've connected with, from the experiences that I've had bringing loved ones through. I've never had any experience where anybody's mentioned it, talked about it, you know, or anything like that. So those are kind of the three main things that are my big takeaways from doing this work.
The last thing you mentioned, of course, is something that I've mentioned in other podcasts and talked about because the concept of hell is prominently mentioned in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's one of the biggest fears of people going to hell.
Yeah.
So what happens to people that do bad things or evil things when they die?
So I will tell you what I believe. And I don't want to sit here and be like, I know that this is 100% true,
Sure.
because the reality is I don't, and I think that a lot of times psychics and mediums don't want to admit that we don't know everything. But I'm going to sit here and I'm going to say, I don't know. But here's what I believe and what I feel intuitively, and what I have talked to my guides about, every once in a while, because this is a topic that's very interesting to me as well. So we do come from one main, God or source or the universe or whatever you want to call it. There's many different names, I feel, for this one overarching energy. And I do think that when people commit crimes or do these heinous acts, um, what they've communicated to me, which I still can't fully wrap my head around, but they've said that it's almost like the energy comes back to source and gets recycled. Okay. So the person, almost like, I don't really know how to explain it, but it's almost like the energy from that soul kind of gets another chance to like be renewed and then come back and start over as a fresh, soul or energy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. That ties into my other question, which was
Sure.
about what you've come across in terms of reincarnation and what you believe in that sense.
Yes. Yeah, I do believe very strongly in reincarnation. I believe very strongly in past lives, just because that was one of the first things that I started researching, as a 12-year-old. I thought it was fascinating. I would have dreams of, these lives that felt like they were memories, and then also doing hypnotherapy to reconnect with these lives to heal trauma. There's an amazing book called Many Lives, Many Masters
Read
by
it. Read
Dr.
it.
Brian Weiss. Yeah, write it down. I'll send it to you.
Yeah. No, I
It's
read it.
an Oh, you read it.
Yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
incredible book, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really do believe it's not just it's not YOLO. You don't only live once. You get to come back a couple times. And I do feel like there is a reincarnation process, because ultimately Earth can act as a school sometimes. We're learning things, we're growing as a soul. And that is what I believe. So yeah, I do believe in past lives, reincarnation, and all of that.
Is there some type of life review that you go through? I mean, I think it's critical for people that believe, that if someone does heinous acts on Earth or terrible things, that there's some judgment, some punishment, some retribution for those
Justice.
acts. It's justice. I mean, it's
Yeah.
hard to believe that you just go back to source, everybody's happy, and your relatives are there, and it's all forgiven and forgotten, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to accept.
Yeah.
Have you come across any type of concept like a life review or any type of justice afterwards?
Well, I do feel that karma plays a big role in this as well. So, you may come back into a life that you are the person, that was the victim then, instead of being the person that was doing the acts. Like there's a lot of things I don't fully know, to be completely honest, but I do believe in karma and in the reincarnation cycle. You do kind of come back as different levels depending on how this life goes. So I do believe that there is a karmic aspect to these things, but I don't fully know, if there is more of like a punishment or a judgment, but I do know that there really isn't any evidence that I've seen of an actual hell or place like that.
How about any type of life review that you might go through as a soul after you
I do
pass?
feel like a lot of people have reported that, in books where people have, died for a couple minutes or, have experienced these near death experiences. I do feel like you meet with your spirit guides and your team and they say, well, how did you do? And you kind of go back over and say, well, you were here to kind of learn to be more compassionate and to learn more about conditional love or unconditional love, and you're here to learn about these things. How did you do? How do you feel like you did? I do believe that that happens. I really do. And then based on that, I feel like you either come back or you rest for a little bit on the other side. So I think that it goes one of two ways after you kind of have that life review.
You mentioned spirit guides. How did you meet your spirit guides, and how does someone who's listening to this meet their spirit guides?
Sure. So I was very lucky. I did a lot of dream work when I first started doing this, and dream work is just accessing like a spiritual plane from your dreams. So what I would do is I would go into sleep and say, I want to see you guys tonight, and these spirit guides would show up in my dreams. I've met my entire team in my dreams, like face to face, which is very special. And I know that I hold that experience very dearly. But I think that when people are first starting out, the easiest thing to do is you can write to them. Hey, spirit guides. And I also encourage play a lot in this work because I think sometimes we take spirituality a little too seriously. So I like to encourage people to play when they start working with their guides and ask them to bring you a little gift, or work with them in a way where you're writing them a letter and just telling them about your day, getting some support from them, and say like, while I'm writing this, can you show me your energy or let me feel your energy. Those are some ways that you can do that. And then one thing that I was saying is, on the play aspect is I like to have people ask for, a free cup of coffee or a little gift, a little flower or something, like a sign from them that they are actually there. And you'll be surprised at how quickly they respond. I asked for a free cup of coffee one time, just kind of like to see if it would actually happen. And I ended up getting free coffee for 2 weeks straight from the same Starbucks location. It was like the best 2 weeks ever. But it's just a fun way to kind of shift our energy to a more positive place while we're working with them. So yeah,
Awesome. Have you had any experiences with past life regression?
I have. So I've done a couple just with Dr. Brian Weiss's audio actually.
So you did it for yourself.
Yes.
Do you do that with as a service for other people or just
I
for
don't.
yourself?
No, I don't do it as a service. I just did it for myself. I was having these really strange experiences when I would go to sleep. I was dreaming of this same situation over and over, and I was like, I need to figure out what this is. So I did his audio and went back to a life where I had died in a way that was a little bit tragic. But it was what I had been seeing in that dream over and over. And after I did it, the dream stopped. So
Oh
it's
man,
very
that's
powerful.
interesting.
Yeah.
Um, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who I may have a niece whom I love dearly who's just starting to experiment with these type of gifts where she
Sure.
receives messages. How do you she suffers from imposter syndrome and whether or not she's hearing herself or hearing others. What type of advice would you give to somebody who's going through that experience?
I definitely feel like it gets easier over time after you practice and after you kind of put your ego aside and you just give the information that you're getting, and don't overthink the information. And getting feedback when you're first starting is really, really important. Like, that was one of the ways that I began to really figure out how spirit was communicating with me. And when they showed me this color, it really did mean this, because for 20 people it showed up in the same way. So for people that are just starting, feedback, doing practice readings, connecting with energy, and just not really caring about if you're wrong is really important. You have to put your ego aside and just give whatever information is coming through. And over time, that gets easier as you start to build the trust. But when you're first starting, feedback is definitely the most important thing, along with, meditation and writing down also when you get these intuitive nudges throughout your day, just the small things. So thinking of a friend and then seeing them calling you on the phone, or thinking of something that you're like, why am I thinking about that? And then it happens later. Little intuitive things like that, writing them down and just bringing awareness to that really helps people build that self-trust as well. So those are
Awesome.
the things. Yeah.
Thank you. And let me just jump back again, if I could, just for a second, back to the religion side of things. Have you ever, in what you do, come across the Christ consciousness or some type of uh, evidence of Jesus Christ in what you do?
I do believe that Jesus Christ did exist, and I there is this spiritual belief that he's actually what we call one of the ascended masters. So one of the people that did reach Christ consciousness while they were here, or enlightenment while they were here on Earth, along with other people that have dedicated their lives to compassion and just being in the presence of that unconditional love always. Um, so yeah, I do feel like, I don't think one thing has to exist without the other. I think that spirituality, let me start over. Hold on.
It's okay.
Um, Pizza.
Okay.
I believe that the Ascended Masters do play a role in being teachers on the other side still, and Jesus is one of them. So accessing, his energy still as sort of a guide or a consciousness, like you were saying, I feel like people use that in spirituality all the time, and there is evidence that people are connecting to Ascended Masters and channeling information and lessons and things like that.
So what would you say? And I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to this, but what would you say to people who question whether or not you believe that Jesus is the Son of God?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't have all of the answers, and especially with religion, I really feel that if you believe that Jesus is the Son of God, which I'm a 100% for, um you can also have a very spiritual existence as well, because Jesus's life was what we're talking about in spirituality today. He was very compassionate, he was very selfless, he embodied unconditional love, which is the whole point of spirituality, is to try to get to that level of enlightenment and that selflessness that Jesus embodied while he was here. So I do think they both can exist in the same sort of space. Um, I think that it's a shame when people close out one or the other, or feel like you have to be on one extreme side or the other, when really, life is about duality, and multiple things can be true at once.
That is beautiful answer.
Thank you. Thank
So let
you.
me let me ask you just one last question, then we'll
Sure.
wrap it up. And I really appreciate your time. Have I'm sure you've heard of people like Sarah Landon, Paul Seilig, people that channel other entities outside of, some of them are alien even.
Yeah.
Have you come across any of that or any evidence of other life forms that are beyond Earth?
I do believe in a sort of interdimensional reality. I do believe that there is such a thing as interdimensional, beings. I do believe that there is life on other planets. I mean, if you look at the size of the universe, how could we not believe that? You know what I mean? If you really look at, even just a galaxy is just mind-blowingly large. So to me, yes, I do believe that there are different systems with different, actually spiritually evolved beings, and a lot of times that's what these people are channeling. And I do believe in, sort of, I don't want to say, I guess I already said it, but interdimensional beings that exist on different planes of existence. I have had experiences with those energies, and that's really the only reason why I believe in it is because of my own experiences. If I hadn't had those experiences, I'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, you
Yeah.
crazy lady. But because I'm in this space and I've had these connections with these energies, I do believe that they are real.
That was exactly what I wanted to ask you, was whether your belief in this was based upon what you've read or seen or what you've personally experienced. So you answered that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have another niece that understands or hears light language. Are you familiar with that?
Oh, yes.
So have you had experience with that?
I haven't, but I have had a mentor that was very familiar with that, and that's like the angelic language, right? Or like an
Yeah,
interdimensional, like,
she tried to explain it to me, but she couldn't even mimic the sound.
yeah, it's very
But
powerful stuff.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, Jackie, first of all, thank you again for your time. But I want to give you some moments here at the end to for some final thoughts that you have, and also how people can find you and find your work.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. This was very fun. You can find me online at etherealjack.com. So it's etherealjac.com. And I am offering a 20% off of any reading for any podcast listener with the code podcast on my website.
Oh, cool.
And then I'm also on YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok under Ethereal Jack, and then Instagram at Ethereal Jack YT. So that's
For
it.
us dummies, ethereal is what?
Ethereal is
ETH?
otherworldly,
No,
and
no, I mean spelling it.
oh, what? I thought you meant what it means. Oh my gosh, it's ETHEREAL.
Etherealjack.com. Okay,
Yes.
cool. How booked out are you?
I mean, usually it's only a couple weeks
Okay,
max, but yeah,
good.
yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts, please?
No, this was great. Very fun. Really, really good questions. I had a blast.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate your time, and
Yeah.
I'll let you know when we post it.
Awesome.
All right.